Good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Tibbles. Welcome to my question presentation, which is going to be on how do we improve degraded agricultural landscapes. I'd like to start off by defining land degradation, which is actually the same as soil degradation. Both of them can be defined as the reduction or loss of biological or economic productivity and complexity of ecosystem goods and services. So ecosystem goods and services are present in healthy soils, healthy landscapes, and they are absent or reduced in degraded landscapes. And these ecosystem goods and services are really important to us. They provide us with a lot of benefits. Some of them include, they help us meet our health and social, as well as our cultural and economic needs. They are the base resources that sustain our lives, food, and they are essential to the sustainability of human communities and economies. So basically, degraded land negatively affects our world's ability to feed itself, for people to earn an income, and we benefit a lot from these ecosystem goods and services. Unfortunately, soil degradation is widespread globally. This is a map of it, and as you can see, there's very few areas of the globe that are untouched by this, and a lot of these areas are the main areas which we use to produce food. So soil degradation is having these negative impacts on these ecosystem goods and services that benefit all of us. And the main culprit for that is the way we feed ourselves, which is industrial agriculture or monocultures. Typically, these are how we feed ourselves, which are widespread fields of the same crop or a small number of crops. And these are basically limited or unable to provide these ecosystem goods and services. So they either are producing food at a lower rate, or they are only able to function with human input, so they won't survive without human intervention, such as fertilizers, irrigation, and pesticides from chemicals. And so people have seen this as a problem, a really big one, and have tried to come up with agricultural techniques that are actually not degrading on the landscape, trying to find ways to feed ourselves that actually restore the landscape that they come from. And biomimicry is a really good way to do this, looking at nature, taking inspiration from them. Biomimicry is the practice that learns from and mimics the strategies that are found in nature to solve human design challenges. And so I'll talk more about that in just a second. Here's a landscape. There's two drastically different ones. They're neighboring each other, so these are not different climates. These are the same climate, they're just managed differently. The one on the right is the bare ground or degraded landscape. The one on the left is a healthy, functioning landscape. And so there's some fundamental things that the covered ground or the healthy landscape is able to do that the degraded landscape cannot. Some of those include capturing energy, so photosynthesis. There's plants on the healthy ground, there isn't on the degraded ground. It's cycling water, so the plants are able to absorb that water and then continue the ecological functions. And then the degraded land is not doing that. The water is either running off or it is evaporating, and a lot of the time those runoff actually removes nutrients from the land, whereas in a healthy landscape, the nutrients are staying on the land and are being cycled throughout the different ecological functions. The determining factor for all those top three are the ecosystem functions. So a healthy landscape is able to facilitate these ecosystem functions, whereas a degraded landscape is not. So by facilitating these ecosystem functions, we can help improve the health of the lands. So healthy land is maintained and created by these ecosystem functions. I'm not the first to discover this, other people have, and they've looked at this and they've looked at the soil food web, which is pretty much universal all around arable landscapes around the world, and they've noticed that organic matter is the foundation for the whole soil food web. So organic matter feeds the fungi and the bacteria, which then feed the plants and the other soil life, which then become bugs and feed birds, and then that excrement from those larger animals is nutrients that is organic matter, and the cycle continues. And so a lot of agricultural techniques have come up with ways to continue this nutrient cycling by producing organic matter and facilitating these ecosystem functions. So the ecosystem functions are essential for soil health, and land with more organic matter can perform more of these ecosystem functions. And so currently there's a lot of techniques out there that have addressed this and have their own ways of creating organic matter and facilitating ecosystem functions. However, there is a lot of criticism, a lot of skepticism to adopting these, and that's mainly due to a lack of evidence. So people that have adopted these have not done so either on a large scale, or they've only been able to do it in certain instances, as well as the lack of scalability. So people question whether these are commercially viable. Can we actually use these agricultural techniques to feed the entire globe? So that's where I come in. I want to add to this body of research by producing more evidence for the efficacy of these agricultural techniques. I'll talk about some of those in my keystone ideas. The first of which is to look at the profitability of these land improvement techniques, comparing them to some of the common industrial agricultural techniques that are in place today, seeing whether there's an economic incentive to go in the more restorative direction. And the second one would be looking at the efficacy of these techniques. How do they work? Comparing different techniques in a controlled setting and quantifying the results by doing soil tests or measuring the agricultural output, the amount of biomass, the food production, and seeing which of these techniques have performed better under these certain circumstances. And the scope of which I hope my keystone to be would be on a regional scale, so able to draw conclusions for an entire region on what are the best restorative land practice techniques, agricultural techniques, and I hope to do this by having multiple evidence collection sites within a region that hopefully are able to give a better picture of the region as a whole, and draw conclusions for the region from that. Embarking on this adventure to pursue my keystone in question, I hope to do some experiential learning opportunities, the first of which would be with the BC Ministry of Agriculture in Victoria or Abbotsford. This would be looking at different policies and how these farmers are adapting with the policies. How do the policies affect these restorative practices? Are they incentivizing it or not? And the second one would be doing workaways or work on organic farm opportunities and getting experience with these different agricultural techniques firsthand, being able to look at how efficient they are and if they're profitable, and hopefully learn the ins and outs of these specific techniques. I have a plan to do that. That involves taking courses here, and then my course plan looks like this. I have 3 more foundations to do, 2 of which I'll be taking this spring. I have 2 more electives, and then I have 5 more concentration courses coming up. Some of the concentration courses I'm looking forward to are geo or inorganic chemistry. So I want to learn about how to test soils, and then I can actually back up my research by doing these tests that is quantifiable and scientifically valid. I want to take communities in conservation, so understanding how these restorative agricultural practices can benefit the communities and can benefit ecological conservation. And then I want to also, one of the classes I'm looking forward to taking is tropical biology, because I want to learn about the ecosystem functions in the most diverse ecosystem on the earth, which is tropical rainforests, and seeing the different ecosystem dynamics that are taking place there, and what we can learn from those when applying agriculture in those climates. A touchstone reading that I'm really looking forward to diving in is the Carbon Farming Solution. It is an attempt to be a database for all of these different agricultural techniques. So I hope to draw some techniques and inspiration from this book before implementing it and refining it on what I hope to be my keystone on a regional scale. Yeah, that's all.